Welcome to the Book in You podcast. My name's Jared Cagle, Executive Vice President here at Maxwell Leadership. This is a podcast where we're helping you, the author or aspiring author, with your next or even first book project. We want to help move you to the front of the line, talk about secrets that you may not know, interview other authors, and tell their story from the process as well. And today I'm thrilled to welcome a couple of our authors. Jason and Haley Bilotti are with us with Sink or Sit, the book that we published with them. Jason and Haley, we're going to talk about the book today. We're also going to talk about the writing process. But first, thanks so much for being with us today.
Oh, great. Thanks, Jared. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're super excited to share our experience today.
I love that you both are on because this has been a unique journey, and we'll get to talk a little bit more about that, where you're co-writers, and the way that you went about it was certainly unique and a good example. So we'll get to dig into that. But you both are such good models of leadership, also relationally. That everyone I talk to, we have more and more connections than I realize by the day, and everyone has such great things to say about you both. Maybe just start off with a little bit about your background, your career journey, and then we can get into the journey of starting to write a book.
Sure. Well, yeah. Thanks, Jared. I've been with Chick-fil-A since I was 15 years old. I'm about to be 54, and
Wow.
Haley and I are both born and raised in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And so we met at Chick-fil-A as teenagers working together, and we just had our 30th anniversary this year of being married. And
Wow.
we have 3 grandchildren, all out of college now, and one is married, and we just became grandparents about 9 weeks ago. So that's pretty exciting. But yeah, the journey for me is Chick-fil-A. I've been with them since, like I said, 15, and then out of college went into a program where I eventually got my own restaurant, and now I have 2 Chick-fil-A restaurants here in Atlanta that I get to operate, and just very blessed through that. And through that, meeting different people through that venue, and then even through our church world, eventually got into missions, and my wife and I spent a lot of time doing missions work in Niger, Africa. And then now have started a nonprofit to focus on the forgotten state of Alaska. And so that kind of is kind of what led us up to the journey of writing a book on this idea of missions and all the things we had done and been called to do through that.
Yeah. And for me, my calling and passion was always to be a mom. So I helped Jason in the restaurant in the early years before we had our first child, Hunter. And then I was blessed to be able to be a stay-at-home mom. And after being a stay-at-home mom for a couple of years, I thought to myself, Lord, I love these kids, but there's got to be another way I can serve you outside of the home. And the Lord opened the door, like Jason mentioned, for us in the area of missions, which is something that I'm extremely passionate about. And as Jason and I served on the mission field for many years, we would come back and just have so many stories of what the Lord had done. And through sharing those stories with other people, more and more people were like, y'all should write a book. And so that is kind of how it led into God calling us to put our story on paper.
Incredible. And what a journey it was, I'm sure, to write the book, but also years in the making. And as I read the book and got to see a little bit of the stories and see even from the challenges to the high points, and Jason almost dying in an obscure location at one point, and your both of your sons and your daughter, just all them even contributing to the book. Talk to me about the process and the journey. How do you go from, okay, we've got this massive story, we've impacted these people, we want to take that further, we want to impact more people. How do you take all that and sort of encapsulate it into one book?
Yeah. I think for me, I always thought if I was going to write anything, it would probably be like my own self-publishing, and it would just be a small, like, takeaway 50-page, 100-page little document that you could carry along somewhere. And people just kept putting in Haley's ear to write a book. And the more we talked about it, we both weren't sure we had enough to fill a book separately. And we came across a book called Hope Heals. Or Hope Heals.
Sure.
Hope Heals.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they had written it together. They had talked about their journey, this wife and husband team, and went back and forth and shared their story. And we really liked that approach. And that's kind of what got us starting to think about, could we work together to put our story together? And honestly, we ended up using a ghostwriter, the man, Dick Parker, that had written all of Truett Cathy's books from Chick-fil-A. And so that was a great process for us. I know there's a bunch of different ways to do it, but with him, he would interview us, hear our side of the story, ask a lot of questions, recorded us the entire time, and then send back, whether you call it a chapter at a time or a little bit more than that. We review it, and then, oh no, that's not really what we said, or you have the dates wrong, or whatever that was, and go back and forth. And I remember specifically one chapter was really light, and we just sat down, and that's when we did write. We added to it a lot. We went back to our journals. I think anytime you journal, and hopefully that's going to be something you might begin to write about it. And we were able to go back and pull from those journals experiences and miracles, and have dates and times and people's names that were attached to that.
Yeah. And for me, Jared, as I had started to think about possibly writing this book, the Lord confirms things for me multiple times when he's calling me to do something. And so I sat down with a friend of mine one time, and we were talking about me possibly writing a book, and just started kind of thinking about the impact of stories that I had shared with her. And through that process, I kind of sat down and started thinking about, okay, well, this chapter could be called to lead. Oh, this one could be called to adopt. And so just tried to start breaking it down a little bit by little bit, so it didn't seem quite so overwhelming. And that kind of gave me a little bit of a starting point to know, okay, well, yeah, this is a direction that I could go in. So that was helpful for me.
Yeah, and it's helpful for the reader too. And I noticed that, every chapter with that tie-in together with called, right? And it leads you on a journey. Would you say that type of, sometimes we call those hooks, right? They're hooks along the way. Do those hooks come to you as the process unfolds, or are you more of an outliner in the beginning that kind of has that idea and roadmap before you jump in?
Well, for me, as I was just thinking about those initial ideas and chapters, the title of the chapter, I wrote some of them down like that. But then as Jason and I continued, once we decided we were going to write together, then some of those changed because we need to incorporate what he was going to be specifically writing about as well. But I definitely think having that outline for us was definitely helpful.
Yeah. One thing that you might be even forgetting on this is we didn't bring those to Dick early on. Like I hadn't even seen them. And so we were having our stories and we're being interviewed. And then she said, I have this list that I worked on a while back. And honestly, I was like, well, I haven't seen it. It may not even apply. And once Dick saw the list, our ghostwriter, he was like, whoa, this is like this. It gave him a way to compartmentalize all these stories we'd been saying. So he goes, that should go under this or that should go under that. And then I think the one about the flood, he ended up naming that one or something. So, but yeah, I think that hook piece came in later for us, but it became the one that everybody was like, that's the deal. And then, I wanted the name of the book. It's one thing we learned through this whole thing, that what you may want as the title may not be what the publisher wants or even the people you're working with. And so what we wanted initially and really thought that's what God laid on our hearts was not where we ended up. And the more we went back and forth in a good, healthy way with the publisher, we landed on this amazing sink or sit. And then it causes people to go, what do you mean by that? And then it gives us a chance to talk about Peter and getting out of the boat and all that kind of stuff.
Well, we'll go into that too, because I was it seems like the origin of SOS, right? Even the origin of where that came from with Morse code. And I'd love for you to maybe unpack that journey a little bit. I think it's helpful for our listeners because titling a book is so important. And it's not easy. It's important and hard, but there's collaboration involved. It sounds like you had a journey to get there. I'd love for you to unpack that a little more.
Yeah, I wanted it to be SOS. It's kind of funny you mentioned that, and I just thought we're gonna do a inner tube in the sand, and it's gonna have SOS written in the sand, and back and forth with the the people that, the publishing company about just different things at Maxwell about, hey, this doesn't really apply to really all the things you're then saying. It's an emergency and this isn't. And so I finally was like, oh, they're right. And so I had to kind of come off of that. And then we went back and looked at what does it even stand for? And it was like sink or sit is where we're kind of getting some of this. So we landed there, and then it allowed us to be able to then tell the story about Peter, took a chance to walk on water with Jesus after the storm, and the rest of them sat there. And so where he did begin to sink, he had already got to walk on water. So we say that it's better to have taken a chance to sink than sit there in idleness and watch the world go by. And so as the Lord calls you to do something, take a chance to get out of that boat. You might just get to walk on water. We only know of two people ever to have walked on water, at least we're told, and that's Jesus and Peter. And so why not answer God's call and say yes? And that's what this whole book was about for us, from Chick-fil-A to Niger. And there's so many people being affected, and then adoption. We never had it in our hearts even to adopt. And God just led us there through this whole process. So.
Mm-hmm. And another cool thing too, Jared, it's such a God thing, is once we decided to change the title of the book to Sink or Sit, then we were trying to figure out what the cover would look like. And as we were working with the publishing team of Maxwell, one of the ladies came back. I had submitted photos because I wanted those in the center of the book so that the reader who knows nothing about Niger, we could create a vivid picture for them. And so as she was thumbing through the pictures, she comes back to us and she said, hey guys, I don't think we have to worry about the design of the front of the book cover. I think you've already got it. And we were like, what? And so she said, yeah, go back and look at this picture. And so that is actually how we got the design of the cover. It's a picture I took in Niger that we were just going to have in an insert as a book. So that was another confirmation for us that the Lord had definitely given us the correct title, as he had even already provided the cover through a photo. So
what a great story. And I love, so a couple of things I want to highlight. One, we say this a lot around here, but it's very Maxwellian, the concept of sink or sit, because one thing John says a lot is don't leave he says, leave your footprints in the sands of time, not your butt prints. Don't get caught sitting. We'd rather be sinking in an effort to impact people, add value to others, than get caught sitting with our butt prints in the sands of time. Okay. But another thing that struck me is, we say a lot that we fight for creativity often when we're developing a book. And it's a good endeavor to fight for what's the creative edge? What's the new way to say something? But clear is always better than clever, especially when it comes to titles. And that's what you did here. It was unique and maybe more clever to go with SOS. But how clear is this message of, hey, it's better to sink than to sit? And even the clear link to Peter and the biblical account there of walking on water. I love the story, but wanted to highlight that point that clarity is always king when it comes to titles, outlines, chapter headings. You have to walk that balance of what's a new, fresh way of saying it, but how do we say it clear so that it connects with the reader? Tell me more, Jason and Haley, about the process of writing this together. And you had a ghostwriter as well. So what an awesome collaborative process. Was it challenging at times? Did you find it a little more easy? Tell me about that journey.
I honestly say, Jared, that it's both. I think the challenge in that is you're both, let me go back. The benefit is when you're both trying to share your perspective of a journey that you've been on together. As Jason would tell a story or share his perspective, it would trigger something in my memory, a detail or something that I may have forgotten. And so we were able to build off one another when trying to share that story. But on the flip side of that, when you are trying to kind of give and take as you're writing, sometimes that was a little bit more challenging because we would share our journeys with Dick, and then he would write and then come back to us. But your thought process is a little bit interrupted when you are, going back and forth. So that would be a little challenging when he would want us to more so make edits or corrections that way, because it may be my thought process, then Jason's interjected. And so trying to make those two mesh or complement sometimes was a little bit more tricky than just a person writing on their own.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would just add that, like in most men and women in life, she was a lot more descriptive than me, right? And so I just get right to the point, and you couldn't write a book like that, very short chapters. And so that's where she really helped me, and expounding and by asking questions and being more descriptive about the sand in Niger and things like that, to be able to so the reader can visualize it.
Mm-hmm. Was it the ghostwriter Dick Parker's idea to separate your voices and literally say, this is where Haley's talking, this is where Jason's talking,
we came to him with that from the book Hope Heals, and we're giving them a plug here, but she's got a great story, and it was back and forth what the husband had gone through and what she had gone through. Mm-hmm. And I just really remember reading that and enjoying the breakup of it, the different perspectives throughout the chapters, but also being able to hear their different ideas, perspectives. And
and Catherine actually wrote a little blurb on the back of our book. And so, we totally took the formatting of our book from theirs. We just thought it was very applicable for Jason and I after we had read their book and how they had written.
Sure. That's awesome. Yeah. Jay and Catherine Wolfe, Hope Heals is the name of that book. You should check it out if you're listening. Don't do it right now while you're driving, but afterwards you could check that out. It is a great story. And I love the way that you took that concept and brought it to life with your story as well. What about the kids? Tell me when they came into this process. Did you have that from the beginning that you wanted to include them in that way?
Yeah, I would say that was the ghostwriter's idea. Wanted to bring them in and highlight them a little bit. And, I think one of them was more talkative than the other two. And so he had to really pull out of them and even come back to them through email and say, I need more, because they were away at college, and ask them to answer a few more questions along the way. Yeah.
But it was so impactful for our entire family that we definitely wanted them to be able to share some of the impact, and we wanted it to be their words, not our words, as their parents. So I thought that was very wise of Dick to bring them in to share some of their experience of the journey.
What a special opportunity. Not many people get to have. And then even in the pictures in the middle, when you look at seeing them in Niger and across the world in action with you, and just not only a part of the story written, but also literally you can see it, and I think I saw your daughter raised some funds to be able to do something there, build a school maybe or something. And
really cool.
Yes,
she did.
That's correct.
How amazing to get to live that out through them, and what a legacy. What would you say, Jason and Haley, what would you say to a brand new author that may be listening right now and has a story to tell? Maybe they have some people nudging them, tapping them on the shoulder. Hey, you really should get this story out there. Would you have any advice or counsel for them?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would just encourage anybody even thinking about if they have a topic or a story is even in the moment, keep journaling and keep writing down thoughts. Have some kind of system, whether it's your phone and notes or a notebook you carry, or something every night before bed that you write on, but just something that, I thought of that, or I thought of that. Because when writing a book, I mean, it's, if you're going to get beyond 100 pages, there's a lot there, right? And so you've got to have enough, if that's what you're feeling called to do, to be able to put on paper. So I think any note taking along the way or going back to journals and things would be good. One big thing that helped us get back to what we were going to talk about.
Yeah. And then I would honestly say, Jared, for us, I think writing, like getting those initial thoughts down was easy. For us, I think the editing process was a little bit more painful, honestly, because you've kind of taken the time to share your thoughts and get it all written down. Then you send it off. to two different sets of fresh eyes, right?
Yeah.
So, of course, they're going to have some feedback and questions and just a different train of thought, which you want. But then you have to go back and kind of incorporate what they now asked you. And to me, that was a little bit more challenging and difficult than just writing down those initial thoughts and sharing your heart, but then trying to go back and convey it in a way in which it makes sense to the reader can be a little more challenging.
Yeah, I
No
think the
question.
editing process was painful, but what was really good about it, at least the people we worked with, is they'd come in pretty strong with an opinion. And then if you came back with clarification, they'd say, well, then we just need to write it differently. But if they came, even if you came back with clarification, they said, still don't get it, like it doesn't fit here, then you could sense that they were probably right, and you needed to remove the emotion of your own self and get out of your own way and say, hey, listen, these people do this for a living, and they've now pushed back twice saying this title or this paragraph doesn't make any sense where it's placed. And I think that was surprising to us because we had used a ghostwriter and we thought, oh, he's got to have it perfectly. But he's the one that was sitting across from us. So even he thought he had it right. But, I think we all landed in a really good spot and appreciated those fresh set of eyes. But going into it, you, as a writer, you could get very defensive.
Yeah.
Like, this is my story. Stop cutting it.
Totally. I'm so glad you both touched on that. By far, the biggest question, or maybe I would say pain point or challenge that we have through the publishing processes with our authors is the editing process. It is just a surprise. And part of the reason we wanted to launch this podcast is to pull back the curtain and really talk about some of these things. For the first time author, you don't come in thinking about how humbling it's going to be when you essentially hand your baby over to someone else and let them, especially when it's your story, that's a different level. But I love what you said. You both said it about how, they've been doing this for a long time, and there's a level of, they're not always right. It's a collaboration, but they do have a valuable perspective, and let's be a team and get this across the finish line. It also made me think about, John Maxwell. He's written 90 plus books and sold 37 million copies. We've read most of them, if not all of them. I know I've talked to both of you about your history with John, and I certainly have a bookshelf full of his books and have worked on a number of his books with him now. And what I'm always blown away by, you mentioned we thought we had the ghostwriter and it would almost be to the finish line. We have a writing team of 4 for every book, and we have editors, and we have proofreaders, and we have, right? So even with someone as accomplished as John, you still have a team around it to make it sharper. I was listening to a conversation you had, Jason, recently with one of our colleagues, Chris Godey and Perry Holly, and you talked about iron sharpening iron, right? That's such a tenet for us as people of faith, but also as authors, that, to submit to this process of where's the iron that we need to be sharpened by if this book's going to be as good as it can be.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right, Jared. If somebody's coming to you guys or going to a publisher, then that needs to be the heart and the idea behind it. Otherwise, they could self-publish, but that is not what they're coming to someone like Maxwell for, and should be open to fresh eyes, and then encouragement around how to promote it and how to get the word out and things like that. Otherwise, there are other opportunities to stay on your own, but you're probably not going to be either happy with it in a few years, or even may not get the best product out there without fresh eyes on it. So.
Yeah, no question. What other surprises? Were there any other surprises along the way that you ran into of the writing process?
I think for us, just how long it took.
Yeah.
But in the end, God totally had it. And so, you'd almost have to tell the whole story, which I won't do, but for us to take that long through COVID and all writing it with the ghostwriter, and then to keep thinking, why is it not done yet, or where, but then through that is when I got to meet John Maxwell personally and accomplished a lifelong goal to spend time with him. And then ultimately this leadership Maxwell thing came out, and then for Jonathan to be in touch with us he's really good friends with the publishing company, with Dick Parker. And so the timing could not have been anything but God's, but in the process, we thought it was taking a long time.
Right. But as we know, Jared, God's timing is always perfect, right? So my encouragement to anybody that's going to be writing is expect a longer process. And if the Lord opens the door sooner for you, then yay, right? But just manage those expectations of, we know you're excited because it's your baby, like you said, Jared, that you're handing over, but you want your baby to be well taken care of, right? We all do as parents. So just know that process is going to take probably a little bit longer than you initially think it's going to take, but it'll be worth it in the end, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Everything worthwhile is uphill, as John says. Well, again, what a testimony, what a story. What a testimony of faithfulness that you both embody, but also I love that the book mirrors that. It took time. It had to be forged. Your story is much like that as well. We could talk about business principles from the book. We could talk about relational principles from the book. We could talk about your pedigree, developing leaders with Chick-fil-A. There's so many things that we could have spent time on this podcast talking about. And I want you to know, listeners, it's all in here. So Sink or Sit, if you don't have the book, available everywhere books are sold, Sink or Sit by Jason and Haley Bilotti. And, but I think about how we could have spent so much time talking about those things, but I wanted to pull out some of these nuggets of wisdom from you as authors. And I wonder if there would be any final words as we're speaking to authors, aspiring authors, people that want to get their message out there and might have a story to tell, or even just something that they believe can impact people, principles, leadership, relationships, something that they want to offer to the world. Just want to give you a chance, maybe some final words to encourage our audience today.
Mine would just be to have humility around the process. I think a lot of people that probably think they have a book, if you haven't been told to write a book around your stories, maybe it is all about you. And so my encouragement would just be, if people have heard what you're sharing or like what you're teaching or what you're preaching or whatever, and they continually say, I want more of this, then that might be an indicator that you should pay attention to that. And Haley and I were slow to get there. We had people over and over, specifically about Rashid's adoption. People would hear that entire story like, that's a book. And it turned out that that's where we were leading with. And then the ghostwriter heard more and said, this is an entire book, like this whole missions thing you're doing and leading at Chick-fil-A, and being able to do that and take time off. And so I think sharing with other people and then being humble about what's your real reasoning for doing it. And ours was just to get our story out and encourage other people to get out of that boat and follow God's call.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And again, I believe, as God's children, we all have a calling or a purpose, right? And we're designed for that. And so pray about it. If God keeps opening that door for you, then keep walking through that door. And for Jason and I, as we continue to do that, once we finally walked in obedience, the Lord kept opening those doors in his perfect timing. So trust God, trust the process, but then remember, God writes the best stories. So hand him your pen. Let him write the story, and you follow in that obedience by getting it down on the paper.
That's so good. Yeah. Follow God's timing, give him the pen. And then if nobody's asking you for your story, it might be all about you. And I love that. That was the gentlest way I've ever heard. John would just say, get over yourself. Jason Bilotti, let the record show, has a nicer way of saying, but it's so true. It is so true. If the book is all about you, are we impacting people? Are we making a difference? Right. And that's what I love about what you two did. You shared your story, but you did it in a way that's to inspire and encourage others. It wasn't all about you. It was a stewardship thing. It was an opportunity to impact people. And what an awesome privilege to know you and to partner with you in this way. Again, Sink or Sit, available everywhere books are sold. Jason and Haley Bilotti. If you're interested in more of this, we've got episodes coming every other week from the Book in You podcast. MaxwellLeadership.com/podcast is where you can find this show and others as well. If you have any questions about publishing or want to talk about what that could look like for you to publish with Maxwell Leadership, I'd love for you to email publishing@maxwellleadership.com, and we'll get back with you. Someone from our team will get back with you and have a conversation and bring your story to life. Thanks so much for joining us today for another episode of The Book in You. We will be back in just a couple of weeks. Jason and Haley, thank you both.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all real soon.